Look at this. Look at what they're doing. Look at what they're making. This is what former Star Wars developers and studios are working on right now, the new Battlefield game. And when I see this footage, even though we only have 15 seconds of it, I can't help but feel, imagine if this was Star Wars. Imagine if EA and DICE stuck with Star Wars, developed Battlefront 3 with environmental destruction, with this kind of fidelity and detail, different trooper classes. Imagine these were clone troopers running through the streets. One can certainly dream. It's crazy to think, however, that the three studios that built Star Wars Battlefront 2, being DICE, Criterion, Motive, and then also Ripple Effect, and now working on this new Battlefield game. That this is the direction EA decided to go in, that this is what's become of it.
New closed testing environment. We call it Battlefield Labs.
I personally am excited for the new Battlefield, but it's still no Battlefront 3. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. So some of you might remember in 2020, Andrew Wilson, the CEO of EA Games, said that EA were planning on doubling down on Star Wars games and doubling their output potentially. That was all the way back in 2020. And it's funny he said this following the cancellation of Battlefront 2's live service, with EA clearly saying they were going to continue working on Star Wars games. So at that point in time, we had hope. Since he said this, there have been a release of 2 Star Wars games from EA, including Star Wars Squadrons, which came out later that year, and then Jedi Survivor, which came out in 2023. We know that currently there is at least 1 or 2 other EA games being developed that are Star Wars themed, being the 3rd Jedi game in the series, and also Bit Reactor and Respawn's Star Wars strategy game. He said with Disney, they're going to double down on that partnership. Disney continues to be very, very committed to the IP and to the canon. So where are the Star Wars games? Now, I totally understand from, I guess, a business point of view, EA wanting to develop their own IP instead of Star Wars, moving towards Battlefield instead of making a Battlefront 3. Battlefield is an EA property. They're likely going to make more money with it, considering they own the rights to the licensing and to the name Battlefield. Whereas if they were making a Star Wars game, they'd have to pay for licensing of characters of the Star Wars brand, of the Star Wars name, of everything. Disney gets a big cut, basically. Whereas with Battlefield, EA are the ones getting all of the money. So I totally get that, and I'm definitely excited about the prospect of a new Battlefield game, having played a lot of Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1.
The numbers, basically. What do they mean?
And felt like most others, with 2042, the franchise lost a bit of its magic. It lost a bit of its identity. But I think it's interesting remembering these words spoken back in 2020 and not really having that fulfilled. With that said though, DICE are literally Battlefield. They are the studio that started Battlefield, that developed it initially, creating Battlefield 1942, Battlefield 3, 4, Battlefield 1.
The numbers.
And as far as I know, are heavily focused on the core gameplay of the new Battlefield. They're focused largely on the multiplayer experience, on weapons, animations, the world design, graphics. And then we have Motive. A lot of you might know them from developing Star Wars Squadrons, which some people argue is the best Star Wars game that EA ever made.
Don't let it cloud your judgment.
Certainly the best flight sim Star Wars game. They're currently developing the story mode of the new Battlefield. Yes, it's intended to have a dedicated story mode campaign.
Good news, everyone!
Alongside this, they're also developing an up-and-coming Iron Man game, which is set to release, I think, sometime in the next few years. Now, Criterion were largely responsible for developing Battlefront 2 Starfighter modes. These guys specialize in vehicle games, having developed the Need for Speed and Burnout series, and also worked extensively on Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, and 2042.
What do they mean?
And I'd say they're acting similarly for the next Battlefield game, acting as kind of a support studio, building specific mechanics within the new Battlefield. And then finally, we have Ripple Effect. This studio was formerly known as DICE LA, and are apparently developing an all-new kind of experience for Battlefield. Now, I speculated back in 2021 when it was announced this studio was being renamed and rebranded as Ripple Effect that they were potentially working on a secret Star Wars game we didn't know about, which is also still possible. Now, as I've stated recently, also, I think there's a huge chance that there are a bunch of Star Wars games in development that just haven't been announced yet, that there are no real murmurings or rumors of, and they are being worked on behind the scenes, perhaps still in the early stages. But like I've also said, it still feels like we're a long way away away from any new Star Wars game releases. For example, it's been rumored that Star Wars Eclipse won't release until the year 2028.
What?
And for a game that was announced in 2021, that's quite a long time.
It's been 84 years.
It's a long time for any game. Now, if you've been watching the videos, it's also true that a lot of developers who previously worked on Battlefront 1 and 2 left DICE and the other EA studios after the project disbanded, Battlefront 2 was cancelled, and Battlefront 3 was pitched and denied by EA and Disney, not wanting to move in that direction. Reportedly, 90% of the Battlefront team no longer work at DICE, having moved on to other projects. For example, Dennis Brandville, the lead developer, went and made his own studio and is currently developing his own games. I know there are a few other developers who ended up working at Ubisoft on Star Wars Outlaws, but I think it's also interesting that EA are putting all of their eggs in one basket with these 4 studios in one game. Let's hope it doesn't have a launch like Battlefront 2 did, like Battlefield 2042. And that is where the playtests begin. With the new Battlefield title, EA are launching something called Battlefield Labs, which is essentially, I believe, a series of worldwide playtests of the new Battlefield before the game releases. You can currently register to be part of the playtest and hear about when they're going to be testing this game, get to play it before it releases, and I think in this respect, you'll also be able to offer feedback. This man has been walking on this line for 7 hours. Not to worry, there are only 243,124 people in front of me in the queue to join the Battlefield playtests. No worries. They're basically doing their quality assurance testing, but using us, the players. Which hopefully means that the idea behind doing this, releasing a game that's fine-tuned by the players, means the next Battlefield title will be a great success, will be a reboot of the franchise. And hopefully maybe also get some of these studios to return to Star Wars in some respect. It seems like DICE and Motive and Ripple Effect and Criterion are all heavily focused on Battlefield and won't be returning to Star Wars anytime soon. But the real question is, do we even really want them to? I think EA have to be given some credit for fixing Battlefront 2, for getting the game to the stage it was when the live service was cancelled, especially considering the shaky launch it had, how terrible it was with the microtransactions, loot boxes, that whole fiasco. But maybe EA have just had their turn with Star Wars and with these kinds of games. Maybe Battlefront 3, if it is ever made, needs to be made somewhere entirely different, and different studio altogether. What if we gave it to the Call of Duty guys? Do it. Disney has that new partnership with Epic Games, which began at the start of last year, buying a $1.5 billion stake in Epic Games. So what if they ended up making Battlefront 3 in Fortnite?
You shouldn't have told me, but you did.
That would be so weird and probably not what anyone wants.
How rude.
But at this stage, I mean, we're gonna get GTA 7 before we get Battlefront 3. But are you excited about the new Battlefield? And do you want EA Studios to return to working on a Battlefront style game or even Star Wars games in general? I'm definitely excited about the third Jedi game from Respawn. But beyond that, do you still want EA working on Star Wars titles? Let me know in the comments. This is all just my opinion. Please let me know yours down below. For a look at the cancelled Battlefront 3 and why it was cancelled, watch this video here, and also come follow me on Instagram, Twitter, join my Discord and TikTok for more. And thanks for watching this. My name's Andrew. Catch you soon.